Okay, so this week we've told you about all the great new books and movies out this month. Well, now we are highlighting the best new podcasts to listen to, and there are so many, it can certainly be tough to find one that you really like. So here to help us is Ashley Flowers, host of the chart-topping, to say the least, Crime Junkie podcast. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Ashley. So I said chart-topping. I want to give people some perspective. Your own hit podcast, Crime Junkie, is huge. I was looking at this. You have a huge audience, over 1 billion. That's billion with a B, downloads to date. You've been the #1 show on Apple Podcasts the last 2 years in a row. So it's a huge platform. I've talked to you before, and I know you're very into giving back, and especially some of the victims' families whose stories you've covered. Like, this isn't an isolated thing. Have you had time to even reach out to some of those families?
Well, I actually got to connect with last year was a couple minutes ago.
Yeah.
But I connected with a couple who actually wasn't a family member, but they heard one of our episodes, and they actually helped get a man exonerated because of the episode. And we got to actually just meet them within the last 2 months. So we have gotten to connect with people who are doing some good stuff.
So let's get to some recommendations for some other shows. And when it comes to a long-form interview, what do you recommend?
So what I recommend is Wiser Than Me with Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
It's a good one.
You know her, you love her. The show is amazing. I would follow her to the ends of the earth, and this show does not disappoint. So when she was going to make a podcast, she kind of looked around and she said, you know, I'm not hearing from older women. No one is talking to them. No one's really listening to them. And so it's an interview podcast where she interviews women wiser than she is.
Oh, wow.
It is absolutely beautiful. So many amazing women on that show. It's the first thing that's made me want to be older since I was 8 years old.
Wow, that's great. That's really interesting.
All right, no, so there's a whole genre, I didn't realize this, of podcasts that talk about the creation and production of music. So who do you recommend there?
So what I recommend is Song Exploder. The host of this show, Rashikesh Hearsay, he is wonderful. It's wild because he meets with artists who break down how songs are made, from the lyrics to actual composition. But it's interesting because the format, he kind of takes himself out of it. And so you hear him at the beginning, but then you just hear from your favorite artist throughout. And from literally beat by beat, instrument by instrument, lyric by lyric, how the song came together, and you get snippets of the song throughout and then at the end. And it is so beautiful. You hear, and from your favorite artists, from Foo Fighters to Billie Eilish to Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, highly recommend.
It's a process podcast.
I can't wait to
It's a process podcast.
Yeah,
It's
very
actually
cool.
really fun. But it takes a while to get used to the format, I will say that.
You think so?
Yeah, well.
I fell in love with it immediately.
Yeah, no, once you get used to it, you're like, oh my God, why has no one done this before?
Yeah.
Genius.
So true crime is where you reign supreme. I also enjoy the true crime podcast. What are you listening to now?
So it's not what I'm listening to now, it's what's coming.
Oh.
So you guys, no one knows about this yet. You're the first in the know.
Yay.
It is a podcast called Media Pressure. And the host is Julie Murray. So this podcast, the trailer just released yesterday. It is a long-form story about the missing case of Maura Murray. In February, she will have been missing 20 years. It's one of the most infamous missing person cases in the true crime community, one of the wildest, twistiest cases. But the story has kind of taken on a life of its own. It's gotten kind of owned by the internet. And there's been so much information and misinformation that Maura herself and her family have kind of gotten lost in it. And so it's actually Maura's sister, Julie Murray, that's hosting it. And it's what I love. It's what Crime Junkie is all about, is giving voices back to the victims and their family. And so for the first time in 20 years, Julie gets to take her story back and correct misinformation and also reveal. I followed the story for a decade, and she's giving information I had never heard before. And that comes out on February 5th, but you can go and follow and listen to the trailer right now.
So interesting. All right, so what if you want to get motivated? This is my neck of the woods. Maybe an inspirational boost. What would you say?
An inspirational boost. Well, I love The Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. So as a business owner myself, his podcast has been incredible. He interviews some of the most influential people, biggest business leaders. He's an incredible interviewer, but what I love most is there's no joke in the name. It is a true diary. You get interviews that you would never get anywhere else. Some really personal, intimate, deep moments with these people, not just about their professional career, but about their personal career. He did an episode recently with Esther Pearl, who is this renowned psychotherapist, and I have sent it to every one of my friends. I said it's 6 months of couples therapy in 2 hours.
So interesting.
Highly recommend.
I didn't even realize it was a podcast. I follow him on Instagram, and I can't tell you how many times I send even the clips to my friends. I didn't even realize it was a podcast.
He's one of the best interviewers I've ever heard.
All right, I'm in. That's great.
Ashley, thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank
So
you.
good. Thank you, Ashley. And also, by the way, Ashley's #1 New York Times best-selling debut novel, All Good People Here is now available on paperback.
God, woman, how do you have the time? Wow.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on our streaming channel, Today All Day. To watch, head to today.com/allday or click the link right here.